Fear makes us uncomfortable, and yet we keep looking for it. Throughout history, humans have gone out of their way to experience fear. We watch unsettling documentaries late at night. We listen to disturbing stories. We pause on headlines that tighten the chest, and then we read further anyway. This isn't accidental, it isn't weakness, and it isn't new. Something inside the human brain is drawn to fear, even when there is no real danger present. To understand why this happens, we have to look at how fear became more than a warning signal and slowly turned into a psychological attraction. Fear is one of the oldest emotions the brain knows. Long before comfort, curiosity, or ambition, fear existed to keep us alive. Early humans survived by paying attention to what could go wrong. A strange noise, a sudden movement, a feeling that something was off. The brain learned a simple rule very early on. Fear means information. But this is where things start to change. As human life became more stable, fear stopped being only about immediate survival. It didn't disappear, it adapted. Instead of responding only to physical threats, the brain began reacting to ideas, stories, and imagined scenarios. And slowly, fear stopped pushing us away. It started pulling us closer. When you experience fear in a controlled environment, your brain reacts strongly. Your attention sharpens, your thoughts narrow, distractions fade. For a moment, everything else disappears, but nothing actually happens. There is no action required, no escape needed, no real danger to survive. This creates a strange psychological loop. The brain receives all the stimulation of threat without paying the cost of real consequences. From its perspective, this is efficient. It gets intensity, focus, and alertness without injury or loss. What happened next raised more questions than answers. Why would a system designed to protect us reward us for fear when nothing is actually wrong? The answer lies in how the brain detects danger in the first place. Deep inside the brain is a fast, automatic alarm system. It doesn't reason, it doesn't wait for evidence, it reacts first and asks questions later. Its job is simple: make sure you notice what could matter. And here's the key detail: it doesn't clearly separate real threats from symbolic ones. A shadow in the dark and a disturbing story can trigger similar internal reactions, not because the brain is broken, but because it is cautious. From an evolutionary standpoint, reacting too often is safer than reacting too late. Fear, in this way, becomes a powerful attention tool. In a world overloaded with information, fear cuts through everything. It forces the mind into the present moment. For a brief time, worries about the future and regrets about the past lose their grip. This is part of why fear feels so intense and oddly engaging. But this clarity comes with a hidden consequence. When the brain begins associating fear with focus and intensity, it starts to treat fear as something valuable, something worth returning to. And this is where curiosity enters. Fear rarely comes alone. It almost always brings uncertainty with it. The unknown creates tension, and the brain dislikes unresolved questions. It wants closure. It wants to know what happens next. This is why unfinished stories, mysteries, and psychological uncertainty are so compelling. The anticipation becomes its own reward. Sometimes the fear of what might happen is more powerful than the outcome itself. But this is where things start to shift again. When fear is chosen rather than forced, the brain processes it differently. Voluntary fear feels controlled, contained, predictable. You decide when it starts. You decide when it ends. That sense of control changes everything. Fear becomes stimulation instead of threat. The brain treats it like a simulation, a way to experience danger without being harmed by it. There is also another layer at work. Fear strengthens memory. When something frightens us, the brain records details more vividly. It assumes the information might be important later. This is why fearful experiences are often remembered more clearly than neutral ones. From an evolutionary standpoint, fear helped humans learn what to avoid. In modern life, it still feels educational, even when the danger is symbolic. But this learning comes with a complication. Repeated exposure to fear slowly changes the brain's baseline. What once felt intense becomes familiar. The same level of stimulation no longer produces the same reaction. So the brain searches for something slightly stronger, slightly darker, slightly more unsettling. This doesn't happen suddenly, it happens quietly, over time, without conscious awareness. The brain isn't chasing fear because it enjoys suffering, it's chasing engagement. And this creates another illusion. Fear often makes us feel prepared, informed, more aware of potential threats. The brain interprets fear-based information as useful knowledge. But this is where things begin to unravel. Constant exposure to fear doesn't always increase understanding. Sometimes it increases alertness without resolution. The alert system remains active longer than it should. Over time, this affects balance. Sleep becomes lighter, decisions feel heavier, emotional responses grow sharper. The brain was designed to respond to fear and then return to calm. When that recovery doesn't happen, fear stops being useful and starts becoming draining. And yet, we keep returning to it. Why? Because fear provides intensity in a world that feels often numb. It gives weight to experience when everything else feels shallow. It signals that something matters. Fear also connects people. Shared fear creates shared attention. Stories about danger, uncertainty, and psychological darkness spread because they trigger the same emotional response in many minds at once. Fear becomes social, reinforced, normalized. But attraction does not mean immunity. Fear is a powerful tool, but it was never meant to be constant. When fear becomes a habit instead of a signal, it reshapes how the brain sees the world. Not louder, not more dramatic, just slightly darker. Fear is not only something we avoid, it is something we study, consume, and sometimes invite in. The human brain doesn't chase fear because it enjoys suffering. It does so because fear feels alive. And that leads to a final question worth sitting with. In a world where fear is always available, how often do we choose it? And what does that choice slowly turn our minds into?